Good morning, everyone. Welcome to I believe this is our 44th Indica Books Writers Open House with Otis. We started this series in late 2020, and we have been conducting this almost every Sunday since, with the occasional breaks in between. And the intent is, as the name suggests, it is an open house where we invite aspiring writers, authors, and anyone who is who's looking to improve their writing skills and get feedback from Otis, who's who is, how should I say, he's an accomplished writer as well as an academic. So we invite people to send in their writing pieces, approximately 800 words in size. And every Sunday when we meet, Otis goes through those pieces, gives feedback, and we use this time to, to invite people to discuss, to ask questions regarding the craft of writing, and to also learn from and observe the interactions with other writers who have sent their pieces. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Otis.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Abhinav. So I am unusually prepared this morning. I wrote down a list of the pieces I think that we have for today, and we only have a few of you. So I have 4 pieces. And right at this moment, so I do have the one problem. We had 2 that were backed up from last week, and that's a piece called The Legendary Lakshman. And on that piece, there isn't the name of the author, so I will suggest that you please do put the name of the author on the piece that you submit, so that I can put that together. So I don't know if that author is here or not. If they are, that's the piece I would like to start with. Deepa's piece is here, and I don't see Deepa right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have Rashma's piece, and I have Sri Charan piece, and I don't see Sri Charan.
Yeah, so I don't see Deepa, either Deepa or Sri Charan yet.
Right, and like I say, I don't know who the author is of Legendary Lakshman. So I'd have see that if I don't have the name on the piece, then I have to track it down through my emails, and that's a disaster. So and generally a waste of time for me. So so if you're here, I do want to do your piece.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Hello. This is Vaishali here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was the one who sent the writing piece on Legendary Lakshman.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So awesome. Not to belabor the point, but put your name on it next time, and then. Sure. But wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. Sure. Let's talk about your piece. Sure.
Sure.
So let me let's see. Let me go to that share. And that's Deepa's piece, Legendary Lakshman. Okay, so great. I'm going to have you read a little bit of this piece so that we can sort of become acquainted with it. And maybe I'm going to make a mark up to here. Let's see. That was fine. Do you see that? Did that yellow mark show up?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you could read just that beginning, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. So the title is Legendary Lakshman, an epitome of morality. It's the prologue. The energizing sun started driving away the fury of darkness. A section of the clear sky was now dotted with a mass of flaming orange. All of a sudden, a slight drizzle wetted the huge lawn. A tiny droplet that fell on a bright blue lotus glittered like a precious diamond. A flock of birds began to take off from their nests, while the tiny one cheerfully. A herd of deer began to run briskly towards The lush green grass and a colony of rabbits started to hop out of their warren in search of freshly uprooted carrots. Gorgeous sunflowers bloomed up slowly to the pace of the rising sun, thereby making room for a swarm of brilliantly colored butterflies to suck honey. Lakshman, who stood on the terrace balcony, kept gazing absent-mindedly at a sparrow underneath. Although he kept staring at the sparrow, his mind was elsewhere. His body was rigid, his eyes were hard, and his face devoid of expressions. Proud battle scars adorned his broad shoulders and his strong torso. If this day had been an ordinary day, his gleaming scars under the dimly lit sky would have made his chest heave up in pride. Lakshman, who had always been a lover of the remarkable nature, would usually be awed by the gracefulness of the landscape. However, this day was no ordinary day, for he was about to leave the one whom he respected with every fiber of his being, and hence Lakshman was neither prided himself, looking at his scars, nor was he amazed at the enchantment of the environment around him. Lakshman went to a chamber adjacent to the balcony and dressed quickly. He wanted it to happen without any delay. He casted away his royal clothing, his expensive jewelry, and his royal slippers. A saffron cloth named dhoti was now draped around his waist, and another saffron cloth named Angavastram hung loosely across his shoulders. A thread named Janu extended from his left shoulder until the lower part of his right abdomen. He took some darba grass in his hands and began climbing down. So I've read the... Hello? Hello?
Oh, sorry.
Hello?
I turned off my mic so I wouldn't be, breathing and stuff.
No problem.
Tell us a little bit about this piece and what you intend for it.
Yeah, it's actually about one of the most important characters in Ramayana. It's about Ram's younger brother Lakshman. So it's Ramayana written from Lakshman's point of view. Actually, the story begins from the moment when Rama passes a verdict. Actually, he punishes his own younger brother. He sentences him to death, and that is when the story begins. And Lakshman actually thinks back about his entire life, right from his childhood till his death. He thinks about his entire life, and that is how the story progresses. So the main protagonist of the story is Lakshman. Actually, Lakshman is none other than Ram's younger brother.
Okay. So yeah. Let me make some comments. For one thing. Okay. I really enjoyed your reading this first part.
Thank you.
And I'll admit that I actually had a better experience with it this time than I did my first time. And I write this note up here. So there are a couple of things that we should always jot this down for ourselves to establish the point of view. The point of view is who is the center of the story, who is perceiving the story, right?
Okay.
If we don't have a person perceiving the story, then the only thing we have is a narrator perceiving the story, and we wonder about that narrator. But one thing I felt very much so, like we have the energizing sun started driving away the fury of the darkness. When we use language like that, what we're doing is we're personifying nature, right? That's a persona, right? Because nature isn't, the sun isn't energizing in and of itself. The sun simply exists, right? The darkness doesn't have a fury. So this is creating a kind of, for me as a reader, it's creating a kind of unreal environment. And a question for you as the author and for all of us as authors is, are we trying to represent an environment that's meant to be seen as real? Or are we trying to represent an environment that's made to seem that we want to have seem unreal? I think that that Lakshman is a historical figure. So I think that Lakshman is a real person. And I think that he lived in a real time, and that the environment was real. Yes. So if you want the reader to perceive him as being a real person, you also
Okay.
want to write the environment as seeming to be real.
Okay.
Okay, I'm saying that, but now I'm putting that aside for a second.
Okay.
The Lakshman, I don't know how many years this goes back, but probably quite a lot. And it's interesting that in the United States, in America, the indigenous people here, were here way before the colonialists arrived. They cultivated the natural environment so that there were deer that were plentiful. I mean, because they grew food, but they also hunted, for protein, and so they actually cultivated the entire natural environment, which when the colonialists came, they were like, this is wilderness, right? They saw it as wilderness, but the indigenous people did not see it as wilderness. It was actually a cultivated landscape that they used and were integrated with. And so I'm thinking a little bit that, like, is this a story from the Mahabharata?
No, it's from the Ramayana.
Oh, okay. But another fairly, like, it's an ancient tale, right?
Yes, exactly.
So it does occur to me, interestingly enough, it occurs to me that the way that the historical environment may have been depicted in these ancient documents suggests this kind of abundance, but not only an abundance, also this sort of integration of the person and the people and the natural environment in a way that you are expressing here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm saying a little bit that, like, when you read it through at first, when I read it on my own, I was like, wow, this isn't real, right? But this time when you read it, I was a little bit more open to this idea that this was the environment that Lakshman did exist in. And his consciousness was a little bit, had this kind of integration with the natural world that might be a little bit an integration that I don't understand coming from my modern perspective. So I have to say, I think that that's interesting. So where I want to get to a little bit is what you want to do when you write is you do want to think and understand sort of what you're representing. In this case, for me, a modern reader, something that seems idealized. But if you think that it's still real, you have to try and understand who your audience is so that they will perceive it as being real, not a fantasy.
Okay.
And this is actually something, working with the Indic Academy and doing these workshops, that I've sort of come to realize more and more. It's like in a sense, what is represented in the ancient texts to me can seem unbelievable, but I've become over time more open to the idea that it is true. It's just simply believable. If someone did something, a great feat of strength, for example, they probably really did it. It's probably true. So you want to try and write your piece with some kind of acknowledgement of your reader, because your purpose finally is to have your reader be able to see it, have your reader be able to integrate and come into the story. So for that, you want to, take care a little bit. Like, even if there was some sense here in this opening with this natural environment, that this was a cultivated space, that this was a almost like a game park. That's what we would call it today. It's a place where people hunted. There were fruit trees. There were birds. There were rabbits that could be snared. There were all these things that were part of the really part of the civilization as it exists. So But anyway, I love this with a little bit of shaping that would allow me to understand this environment a little bit more. I really love it. The main thing here, and then this is a little bit another maybe a way to consider the audience. Well, actually, no. You told me that there's a backstory, and Lakshman is basically been committed to, he's going to be killed. And I think you're right, actually, not to deal with the backstory very much. But the thing with stories, and I brought it up last week, and I showed you those notes, which I could go back to, but I think probably confused everybody. But basically what happens in a story is a dynamic occurrence. So what you have here, I like it, but we basically have Lakshman really in the course of this piece, Lakshman doesn't do anything. He basically is walking to his death. And that's only one character, right? That's just the protagonist. The protagonist is going this way, and he goes this way, and then it ends.
Yes.
A story is the way I distinguish a story, which engages the reader at a level up here, as opposed to just being as gorgeous as the typing might be, as gorgeous as this environment might be. It is just typing in a sense. It's gorgeous typing. It's I would say it's like a long prose poem, but it's which is maybe a form that you want to develop, but it's not a dynamic story. A dynamic story requires a protagonist trying to get something, which can also be not get something. So it's usually like get something, but not get death, usually, right? Versus an antagonist. And it's in the clash of the protagonist and the antagonist that we create energy. And that is the excitement of the story, that energy. And that represents a struggle that takes place throughout the piece. So in a short piece like this, it might be just one thing, one clash with an antagonist that leads to the end. So what we have is, we have the beginning, the character, that's the beginning. We have the middle, which we can call the duration of struggle. It can be either a novel length or it can be a short story, but the middle is the duration of struggle. And that's when the protagonist and antagonist clash. And then we have the ending, where out of that clash, the protagonist is changed. So basically, the way a story works, it's not very complicated. We've been telling them for centuries, centuries of stories, right? Protagonist comes, something happens, and the protagonist is affected by that. So that's, I make the notes. We want to show and dramatize something happening. That's what we do. I mean, on one level, what happens is the character changes their mental state. They change their spiritual state. They change something that's metaphysical. But we as dramatists have to show that take place. And we show it take place by using a protagonist, an antagonist, and then coming to the logical conclusion of some kind of effect, basically cause and effect. And so I think that that's the thing that will rise this up. You have to, here in this story, you'll have to think about, okay, he walks from here to here. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But something has to happen, and he has to change. He has to be one way this way, and he has to be another way this way. But it's a wonderful short piece, and I love the details, and I think do a little bit more work so that I can understand that this is a real place and not a fantasy like Disneyland kind of thing where the birds, you know, dress Cinderella and stuff. We don't want that. We want reality.
Okay.
But I think it can be a really nice piece.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for this piece.
Yes, thank you so much.
Let me just check to see if Deepa has come. I don't think so. Okay, I feel like we're moving right along. Let's move. Rashma, I think you're here. Where is your piece? Where's your piece? Hi, Rashma, how are you?
Hey, all good. How are you? Finally, you got my piece. Yeah.
Hey, I'm really excited to talk about this piece. This, you know, it occurs to me, it's well, we'll have you read some first, and then we're going to get involved in it. Let's see, where are they? They come, we have the setup here. Where's the section with the Walt Whitman? Okay, maybe can you see this page here? Maybe, yeah. Could you just set it up a little bit and then read this section so that we understand the sort of premise? You know, you can give us the premise between the two and then read the section and then we'll talk.
Yeah. So it's about this couple where Jay is now 2 years. He's been sitting at home and writing a novel, and Anjali wants him to go back to work. And it's really about the normal and, you know, the social prescriptions that she lives by. She wants, you know, a working AC. Who doesn't? I mean, it's so hot, 40 degrees in Delhi. And I have this image of the writer sitting under a creaking fan. Of course, on theater, you can hear the fan sound that can be worked in. And however banal he may be, to me, anyone who's in a creative process, there's still, you know, we have a projector with Van Gogh's paintings that change, and Chopin or Western classical music, because it's a process of creation. However, outcome might not be that great. So just creating that flow in his mind is very hard to dramatize a writing process on stage. You can still cinematically show it, but so I thought I'll use that, you know, little manipulation or to get into the visual element. And here they are. And he's done the cooking. It's a Friday evening, weekend. He's made biryani for her, chilled the beer, and she comes home and she says, we have to go out to my mother's anniversary. The social life she wants to engage in, and he wants to withdraw. He has withdrawn, and he'd rather keep her close and withdrawn in his world. And she wants him to move out of this. So it's really just juxtaposing those two things that exist. And in my mind, when you start out to create something, you also have to destroy something else. So on the one hand, Jay is creating something. On the other hand, he's destroying marriage, social relationships. And then I also want to go into why is he writing? What is this? So I don't know. That's why I asked, am I sowing too many seeds in there? But then I have to go into the interiority of a complex character. I mean, they're just two characters. So I have to know them more, you know, why they're writing and where's it going to take them.
Okay, great. Can you read this this little interaction? Excuse me.
Which one? Okay, cool. They won't allow you inside Taj if you don't shave and bathe. I'll iron your shirt. Anjali exits to the bedroom. Jay, your dad's throwing a party at Taj? That's 5,000 rupees a guest. Anjali off. Dad is a typical Punjabi businessman, lives life large. Jay, your dad sells old cars in a junkyard. That makes him a junk dealer, not a businessman. Anjali returns with the shirt. I'm sorry, my vocabulary is limited. Can you now get dressed? Jay, I can't skip my writing class to party. Jay crumples the shirt and puts it on the table. Not that these classes are helping. You've been to 20 workshops in the last 2 years and you're still writing your first novel. Anjali straightens the shirt and hangs it on the back of the chair. So, do you want me to continue going on? Writing doesn't work like your BPO process. It has a rhythm. The landlord doesn't understand your rhythms. You got to earn so that we can live a normal life. I can earn as little as I want to, and this is my normal. You don't go out, you have no friends, you don't want to meet my family, your family doesn't want to see you. How's that normal?
Okay, thank you. I think that this scene, is already at a really high level. I believe both of these characters, and I believe this interaction. I believe this, this sense of encounter and clash between them.
Right.
So I think in a sense, you're doing something that's all there, I could even seeing this produced.
Right.
So I think that, it's at a level in which it can be produced. But I think for me, it still would need to rise something to be something that's like really strikes to the heart.
Right.
I've seen plays like this. I think that I would walk out a little dissatisfied.
Right.
Right. Because I haven't, in a sense, when I say strike the heart, I mean sort of been penetrated by what's occurred between these two people in a way that really changes me as the audience member. Because I think it's, I was saying a second ago, it's like the story, right, is not just this thing that goes like this. It is a clash, right? So the protagonist comes in, something happens, right? And they come out changed. And the reason that that's a story is because that's what the reader wants. The reader doesn't want to just spend time doing something. They want to be affected by what happens. They want to be affected by the story, and they want to be changed. So that's actually, and this is by telling the story is how we do that. We're actually accomplishing something for the audience. That's our objective, finally. And, that's the reason for our work. So in a simple way, we could say, like, in this piece, what's happening? Who's the protagonist? What happens? And then how do they leave changed in a way that affects me as deeply as possible, that seems absolutely real? Mm-hmm. That is kind of the question. So there are, I think one way to consider it is, again, go back to these sort of simple physical processes. So it's like, it's not this story, we can talk about, we will talk about these characters and making that happen. So like, one is to really clearly define this, right? The next is to really clearly define the antagonist. And I've said this before, it's like the greatest power, because we're trying to create power. The greatest power is created by diametric opposition. Mm-hmm. I think that's just a physical principle. Right?
But isn't there enough diametric opposition going on between these two people? Of course, we don't know who to side with, depending on who. it really is, it's up to, I just have a feeling that they're both each other's antagonists and protagonists.
It's not a question, it's not a question of us siding for one or the other. We actually should be able to side with both. We're just, and in a play that's even more possible because you don't have a point of view character quite as much as you do when you're writing a piece.
Right.
But there still is a point of view character. I mean, Jay seems like the point of view character. He's the one that begins.
More sympathetic,
And he's the one that ends. Yeah, he is cast a little bit more sympathetically.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's actually a little bit of a weakness because Anjali is not as strong as she should be. She should be just as right as Jay is. It's not an issue of one of them being right or more sympathetic. They're both absolutely right. Like for example, like I was even thinking in that section that you read, he says, your father is having, the celebration at the Taj. And then Jay says, oh, he's not a businessman, he's a junkyard salesman. And then Anjali could say, he's a junkyard salesman that's having a party at the Taj.
Right.
It's like, right. I mean, you call him what you want. You can disparage him if you want.
But he's at Taj, right?
He's at the Taj and you're not going to be there, or you're going to be there because you're his guest. So you choose. So, I'm just talking about in principle to say that we're going to have the greatest energy from diametric opposition.
Right.
So then we can think about how are they diametrically opposed and about what, right? So I just put that sort of on the side thing, like if I basically, and when I talk about diametric opposition, I'm actually not just talking about them, being different people. Yes, that would be good. And so we might have a list of the way they are, certain things, et cetera, and make them different. But it's also a question of the force in which they're arriving together. He's coming with, it's not just energy is created by mass times speed, right? Mass times speed equals force. So mass times speed, who is he and how is he moving? And who is she and how is she moving? Boom, the quicker they hit together, the more energy we create. Physical principle.
Right.
So one thing that occurred to me in the beginning, and again, this is a high level, and I, almost not all of the dialogue, but I believe a lot of the dialogue. But it is, in a sense, passive. Like one of my first notes is, and this is something for us, all of us, every single one of us as writers. Why is today different?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, essentially, what's the inciting incident?
Right.
Because what happens in our lives is that we actually go through our lives, and most of us are in real life, we never change. That's why a story is up here and real life is down here.
Right.
Real life, we avoid change at all costs, and we usually don't find any. So we're usually successful in our quest not to change. And so we start out as A, and we go through our entire lives and we die A. We don't change. Stories are interesting to us because something happens. In life, it can be that nothing happens or we don't perceive of anything happening because we're not changed by the events that occur in our life. But in stories, that's exactly what occurs. So for that to happen, there has to be a change. We're going through our entire life, but we enter the beginning of the story and something is different.
Right.
That's a place that I would start.
Right.
So like I would start because the thing that's coming in that's different, and this is a little bit like Rashma, No. I was gonna say this is yeah, it is a little bit of exposition. It is kind of exposition because you're just giving us their normal. You're giving us their normal and nothing is really different. So it's normal here and it's going to be normal at the end. They're together here and kind of unhappy and disconnected. And at the end, they're sort of unhappy and disconnected. I mean, there's a passionate kiss, but I I don't see how that's been generated out of anything. It's sort of like a,
Okay.
it's a little bit like a Deus ex machina. It just comes in to make everything okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I actually something like that physical is always played out, and if actors think that they don't feel like doing it, it wouldn't happen. And I can see already that actors are going to say no to that because they've said, I just don't feel like doing it. And
I know, I love actors for that. That's just like our, you know, when I write, it's like my characters never feel like doing what I want them to do.
I don't feel like kissing this person. That's it. There goes.
Yeah. So to me, like I want Anjali for something to have happened. I kind of want Anjali to have gotten a promotion.
Okay.
Like, I want, so I actually, this is maybe a sad story, but when I was at Stanford, Stanford offered me the ability to go to Paris for a year. And I had a relationship with a woman, and I was trying to write, and I was doing everything possible to try and write, and she was not finding a job and didn't seem to be able to do very much. And that was putting a real strain on me because my money was important to me, because money meant time that I could write. So that was everything. And so I got this thing to Paris, and I came home and I told her about it. And I said, I'm going to Paris. And she was like, because that was the thing that had changed. Like, I was like, I can't take you. I can't take you there. I'm going to go try and write, and I can't. So
right.
I did think of that a little bit for Anjali, like what is the thing, she wants something. When is the time that she wants something? And then it seems like Jay is not included in that anymore. Basically, she wants to upgrade her Jay.
Right. That's right. She wants to upgrade it. Jay is good as long as he writes love letters. That's beautiful. But when he starts to write novels, it doesn't work.
Right.
Her.
And also he's not going to get a job writing love letters. So if he were to have a job and wrote love letters, then he would be fine.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's I like that. I like that understanding of Anjali's feeling about Jay.
And also I felt, in Indian context, I kind of thought about them. It's two people never marry. They marry their mother-in-law, they marry the father-in-law, and the aunt and the neighbor. Everyone comes into the marriages. So if these two people didn't have so many, social prescriptions coming their way, they would still have had a chance at happiness. But Anjali is being pulled into, that a good life of Taj and wanting. So that's where I thought sympathies would go with Anjali for that reason.
Right. And I mean, I think also sort of understandably, if they're not married, right, they're not making that commitment and they're holding back from it, it can seem maybe both of them are interested in an upgrade, right? And so like you can see from Jay's point of view, right? He wants less pressure and less. So like, this is the way I think about it a little bit. Like, I mean, it could be that like someone offers Jay a job. That's it's a little bit obvious, right? But if Anjali, everything is the same, actually Anjali, their entire life has improved. But what it does is it sheds a light on the problem between them. For Jay, Anjali getting a better job is good for him.
Right.
It basically becomes an upgrade for him, because then there should be less financial stress, less of these things, right? And he can be more of a kept, taken care of writer. Maybe he would want to maybe if there was someone. Yeah, if maybe an Anjali 2 came in and was like, well, I'm a patron of the arts, right? And maybe that's interesting too, right?
Right.
Like they're both they're both sort of seeking an upgrade because what they have is not working, basically.
Right.
What they have is not working, but they haven't had the guts to basically approach it because they can't, in a sense, right now. They can't communicate through that. So a question is, can we notch it up and create more tension by changing their status with each other so that they are forced to confront whatever is the problem between them? That becomes an inciting incident, right? And so, and I think that what you have here in the beginning is good, because you want to set, for Jay, it's all the same, right?
Right.
But then, as they say, in walks the dame.
Yeah.
And things are different,
Right.
She's like, I got a promotion, and he's like, great, life is going to be even better than ever. And
yeah,
she's
I can
like,
write. I can keep working on the novel.
Yeah, right. I can keep working on the novel and everything's perfect. It's like, no, because and if you see, I love what you say about the love letters too, because that's big. Like when he's writing the love letters, he's providing a service for her, and in exchange for the money, right? It's a transactional relationship.
Right.
I do think about this sometimes. I think that there is this, I go, where's my Martin Buber? But the concepts pretty well. I and thou is one kind of relationship, and I and it is another. It doesn't matter whether, it's like, and I see the I and it relationship as being kind of a transactional relationship. He provides love letters, she provides money for food and housing, right? It's not nothing to get love letters. I feel great when I get them, right? Wow, I'm so, so it's tangible.
Right.
It's an exchange though.
Right.
When she has her promotion, she's getting her love letters elsewhere, and he's not providing the love letters. So what transaction are they continuing to engage in? And then it also means that he has to recognize himself that he's engaged in a transaction. Right? We artists like to think that we are somehow engaged in something that's not transactional, but I'm not sure that we're somehow separated from the rest of humanity.
Right. And this is what I'm going to explore, and that is to explore for myself. And and I don't know, I don't have the answers. That is why,
that's why we write the story.
Yes. So I don't know. So perhaps when I've reached the last scene, I would know what to do with the scene one. So that was my thing. I had one question. I didn't know if it makes sense and if we have the time, but it was like, every time we start out to write, I tend to ask myself, why write this story and why write it now? So
yes, good questions. Very good questions.
Yeah. So if I can kind of, that would give me in that sense, I give myself the permission to go ahead and spend that much effort on, and just go all out once I have that answer in my mind. So yeah, so how do we answer it?
Well, I don't know how to answer it, but I think that the issue of transactional relationships between human beings is basically describes the state of the world as we have it right now. So I think it's look at our human encounters and try to describe them as not being transactional.
Okay.
Where every single person is looking at every other person either as it's I and it's it. Are they an it that's above us and therefore we need to manipulate so we can rise, or is an it that's below us that we need to keep below us? This describes the world to me right now.
Right.
So trying to break through that and trying to arrive at something. But I love what you say, you know, we as writers, why today, why now? What we do is we look at characters and we create an inciting incident that's it's like the spark that touches it off. And like you say, you don't know the answer. I don't know the answer of what happens. I don't know what the answer. That's exactly what we want. Write it out. Try and have them be diametrically opposed, right? And what we do is we come up with an answer. We do not come up with the answer, right? We're artists. We're as fallible as anyone. We're subject to our time and place and all of our experiences, and we come up with an answer. And that's what we do. That's our job. And hopefully we write it truly enough that it penetrates, you know, the heart of our audience and changes them and makes them think a little bit differently.
Right.
If it were for me, I mean, I know I mentioned this before, you know, when he gets into his flow, he has Van Gogh and
Chopin.
And I think, and Chopin, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny, I actually just saw this big art exhibit in Portland of Van Gogh. And when I went there, I actually had quite a bad experience with this sort of sense of the deification of, honestly, the white male artist once again. Like it's like a new, it was huge. It was this huge room and they had these, I mean, incredible. It was almost more of an interaction with technology, because they had this technology of being able to take his paintings and put them all around the room so that you were immersed in them. And I was like, honestly, I felt like I was going to throw up. I'm not quite throw up, but I mean, I was like, are you giving me a break? I have to be surrounded by Van Gogh. I mean, he was an artist. He was a painter. I like his work, but I don't think he's a god. I mean, give me a break. So I will still encourage you, you know, like if he, rather than his, yes, right now it's a little cliche, he wants to write something that's unintelligible to her. I mean, that just sort of makes him an ass, right, to me. Right. But if he has, like, his whole way of thinking is this sort of westernized sort of, and yes, I mean, it is reflected in the language, but these issues of status all the time, right? I mean, he's involved in these issues of status and she's involved in other issues of status.
That's right.
But I would love,
yes. Yeah.
I would love for that to come out. I mean, like, even if she said, why are you always writing these Western themes? Why are you always, you know, pursuing this Western dream? You know, why don't you write something that's, I mean, Hindu? Why not write something that's here, that's in the world around you? What are you trying to run from? Right. You know, I mean, it makes them more diametrically opposed, but again, it creates the greater possibility of action, right? And we just want as much of that as possible. But you have two characters that are ready to do it. I think you just have to touch the match to them.
Right, I do that. Right.
Yeah. I really like, I love how real these characters are. I love how real their struggle is. I love how I absolutely relate to it. And I think anyone on earth will relate to it. And that is that's a really great, you know, platform to be working on. Right.
I'll get down to, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this work. Sri Charan is, let's talk about your work.
Yeah, hi Otis.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Thanks. You are writing up a storm. Your keys are on fire. This is great to see.
I wish they will type more speedily. I'm kind of stuck at some point.
My go-to is the quote by, I'm pretty sure it's Flannery O'Connor. Every morning I go and sit in front of the keyboard so that if something happens, I'm there to see it. So just keep sitting there. My thing, I've used to joke that it was going to be written on my gravestone is going to be write 5 minutes a day.
It's a good. I mean, even 5 minutes is kind of a productivity, I guess, right?
Well, it's usually what happens is you don't have an excuse not to. So you might as well just go ahead and do it. And then if you do have the time, you usually sit there a little bit longer. But as a process, it worked for me. I mean, I had to finish my first novel, which I deemed a failure, but who would have thunk it? I'm now working on it again. So, but at the time I did, but I needed to finish it. And that's what got me through 5 minutes a day.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then that was, 600 pages long. So, let's talk about this piece a little bit. Let's see, where are we going to go to? Maybe you could read this section here. Tell us, just set us up a little bit about what we're hearing, and then
Yeah, so
and then read the
it is a
section.
story about a king called Dhritarashtra. It's his POV. So what is happening is his son is born this day, but he's not that satisfied because he's satisfied, but he's kind of, there is some emptiness in him because another son has already born from his younger brother. So there is more chance for his younger brother's son to become king than his own son. So that's what I'm trying to establish here. So this is the scene where the son is born, the
Right.
antagonist of Mahabharata.
And it's also where all the aren't there's like hundreds of pots, aren't there?
Yeah, 100 pots.
Yeah.
101 pots.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Can you read this section here? Lead me, he commanded.
Yeah, sure. Lead me, he commanded to no one, though the maid took his hands, soft and thick, on her own. He could not imagine what her face looked like, nor anyone's. All he remembered was a maid he had defiled on his own bed he had been sleeping not 5 minutes ago. What's her name? She had pleasured him well enough after a brief futile struggle. That she had done well enough. He had given her gold and the gods had given her a womb. What's the mother's name? The blind king asked the maid leading him. The queen Gandhari Maharaja, she said. She could not be more than 12 from the way she stuttered and tenderness of her voice. I know my wife's name well enough, girl, Dhritarashtra scowled. I'm asking the mother's name, that Vaishya woman. He waited for a few moments, but an answer impatiently. You're not deaf, are you? I, Maharaja. No, the queen is the mother. A child came from the pot.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, great. I think the thing that I enjoyed the most about this piece, and it's not 100% consistent, but that you write from the blind king's point of view, that he can't see, that he puts out his hand, for example, and that it's taken. You could do it even closer in his point of view, the sightless point of view, but it's really good. And I think it does something for the reader that the reader wants. The reader wants to experience something new. They want to walk, kind of that old saying, like they want to walk in someone else's shoes. That's like the first thing that we give the reader. The ability, I think, I place it very highly above like ideology and the meaning and the blah, 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 forget all that stuff. I get a lot of meanings, but I don't get the chance to walk in someone else's shoes ever in my life, except for in a well-told story. So I place that very high. And I think that the more you can do that, the better. And also, when we delve into point of view in that very deep way, we also make discoveries about stories through our imagination and our process that might not have been there before, because you know this story very well. Everyone, here knows this story very well, except for me, right? You know this story very, very well, but do we know it from the point of view of this king, right? And in his point of view, in a sense, even though he's blind, okay, I'm not trying to make a kind of pun, but it sheds a new light on the story, doesn't it? Yeah. To be inside his point of view. And that's the thing that you add. That's your added value. We know the story. Your added value is that you go inside the head of the blind king. And I think that that's really interesting. If you want to read a story that I think is one of the, there's a writer named Anthony Doerr, Doer, I'm pretty sure. And he wrote a collection of stories that I honestly could suggest to everybody. The collection is called The Shell Collector, and that title story is about a blind man. So I suggest it to you because you'll see that, right? What, Sri Charan, let me ask you this question. If you're writing from the point of view of a blind man, what kinds of words do you think you're going to use instead of sight words?
Smell, hear, or touch, other senses.
Exactly. Anthony Doerr is like, I would call him a writer's writer. Like, he's a person who is like, he's like me, I think, in this way. It's like, we don't really have any talent, but we think about writing, and we're like, what can I do? We're strategists, right? And he wrote this collection of short stories, and in each one, he gives himself a problem. And the problem of that title story was blindness. And then he came up with a strategy to solve that problem, to write something that was just as sensual, right? Just as sensory and effective, basically, for the reader, that excluded seeing. And it is a fabulous story. So I suggest it to you. I suggest it to everyone here to understand how point of view works. It's called The Shell Collector by Anthony Doerr. And then sometime we'll talk about all the other stories too. So I think that that's a very, very good start and very good choice here. Sharon, I like you as a writer because, well, you do the things that I do. This first paragraph is a mess. It's a mess. I'm just going to tell you straight out. But this is something that writers do very often, is that we labor over this first paragraph. We write it for months and we write it for years. And then sometime down the road, we just cut it out. And we never will get that time back. And all we can do is try and convince ourselves that we needed to write that in order to write the rest of it. But it's where you're trying to figure it out. And this is one of our toughest places. There's the thing that we probably that helps us as writers the most, and this is something for all of us to write down. It's this little saying called in media res. Have you ever heard that?
No.
I think it's Greek. Is it Greek or Latin? I think it's Greek. In media res, in the middle of the action. So it's been helpful for me. Sometimes when we write something that's a setup, right? It's us trying to figure out the world. It's us trying to do this, that, and the other thing. We need to do that, but it's really development work. And then we should just cut down to the action.
Okay.
But yeah, I would, so like this section here, it came, Maharaja, the maid came rushing in. So all of that, if we can really, the more thoroughly in the point of view of the king we can be, the better. using that kind of language that allows us to understand that he's having these other sensory reactions, right? You know, he may know the maid by smell, right? He may know, and you know, he feels the thing that he's lying in. He reaches, he grabs. You know, later on, you have the kind of nice scene where he touches the queen's face. It's a little bit clunky, but you can go even further. The thing about point of view is, this is, I mean, and an unusual point of view like this one, it's really up to how much work we as the writer want to do. And I want to encourage you to do as much work as you can on it, because you do get paid off. There's a huge payoff with putting the reader in another point of view. They want to read from another point of view. They want to experience the world in a unique way. So that's great. So I like all of that. Comes in, you know, work on it. Lead me, he commanded. He, you know, and even there, lead me, he commanded. He thrust his hand out into the cool air, right? Or he thrust his hand out in the direction of the fire where it was warmer, right? Anything like that, right? We're with him. He can feel the room around him. And if it was a room that had a fire, then he would feel where it was warmer. These are things that we don't notice because we're so sight dominated, but because he's not sight dominated, these other things will take its place. You know, then she takes his hand. You know, what's her hand like? It's probably strong. She's a maid. Her hand is probably strong. It might be stronger than his. Calloused, you know, all these things. So once we start to think about it, all these things start to occur to us. You know, leads him through we have this little, I know that this is part of the story. It's confusing coming right here. You know, because you're connecting it up with the maid. You're like the maid, and then he, you know, raped a maid, and that's, you know, but you're connecting it up through the maid thing. You're not connecting it up through maybe the logical, you know, I know what your logic is. Your logic is when he hears that there's a child, he thinks that maybe it's this maid's child. And that is the case because the maid does have a child, right? As I recall. So
later.
Right,
she's
so
at the point
later, so,
of pregnancy.
Right. So you might be trying to do too much. I don't know. You might be trying to like jam too much into the story. So,
I
you know, just, think about it. Also, it might be something that you're already sort of suggesting when he says, "What's the mother's name?" Right? So, right. So that might already be suggested. And for those people who know the story, then they understand the association. For those people who don't, they still basically understand that when he's told that he has a child, he doesn't know whose child, he doesn't know who the mother is. So that's telling him something, that's telling us something already, and probably the more important information. And then, right, I think you do a nice job. She could not be more than 12 from the way she stuttered, the tenderness of her voice. That's well done. I know my wife's name well enough, girl. I'm asking the mother's name. You're not deaf, are you? And then et cetera, and the dialogue is nice. And I like that interaction is good too, in the action of it. And I'm getting information. It's advancing the story through the dialogue. So that's well done. I just marked this, you know, you're not going to need to, if we're really immersed in the point of view, you're not going to need to tell us that, right? And he's probably not going to be thinking it. He's just living his life. Yeah, and so this is a nice scene. He thought of moving away from her and the darkness below, but let himself touch the face of his wife. her skin felt warm. You do a nice job. So I'm not giving you advice here that you're already going down this path. And now I'm just trying to encourage you to go down this path even more so.
Yeah.
Maybe even much more so. Read that story and mark it. Mark those words,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
You understand what I'm talking about? It's like, this is the thing that I've always been in the search for the words, right? I know what I want to do, but I want those words because it's words that we use. That's the bridge between us and our reader. So read his story, see what he does, mark those words, use them, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks, Otis. Yeah, one issue is that it is really difficult to write a blind person's POV, right?
That's why we do it. So that's why Anthony Doerr is a writer's writer. What we do as writers is we solve problems. Our first problem is the problem of getting the reader to read our book. That's our first problem. So that everything comes from that. That's the first problem. And everything we do is to make that happen. One of the things we do to make that happen is we use point of view. And the next thing we do is we use a point of view that's unique so that they have an experience that's new to them that they've never had before.
Yes,
and so now we have the problem of having to write a unique point of view. How the heck are we going to do that?
Yeah, make some research and really experience how they felt, right?
Right. And do, this is what I've done. I mean, I want to reach the writer. I want to reach the reader. I want readers to read my book. I want them to open my book and not put it down. So I do everything that I can to make that happen. And yeah, that means figuring it out. That's what we do. Talented people, they do other things. I don't know what talented people do. Okay. I don't know those people. I know people that work hard, figure out the problem, and then solve it. But yeah, this is a great start.
Yeah. Thanks, Otis.
And did Deepa come? I don't think so. And so I think that's what we have for today. Do we have any questions about anything? I'm not, if anyone ever tries to chat to me, oh, no, they don't.
Sorry, Otis, was there a question?
No, I was just looking at the chat. I was just going to say, if anyone ever tries to chat, I know some teachers are like, you can chat and they can both talk and answer chats. That is not me. I'm the blinders on.
Good. So you have basically one backlog, which is Deepa's backlog, and that's because she's not here. And that clears whatever else people had submitted. So I'm going to ping people and remind them that they should send pieces. I know I have to send one. So
it doesn't have to be long for me to talk a lot about it. So
no, I wanted to send the third part of what I'd started writing. So I'd sent you two pieces about this, the man, the dog, and the snake skin. And I wanted to send I haven't given it much thought, but I thought I had what I wanted to write next. So I will try and write it up. But in either case, in any case, people should send their pieces in, and we'll we will hopefully have enough submissions for us to meet next Sunday. The deadline is by end of Friday, your day, that is India time, you should send those pieces in, so that Friday morning, Otis has those pieces in his inbox and he can go over them. And if there are 3 or 4 pieces, then it makes sense to do the session on Sunday. If not, we will cancel that session and we will roll over the submitted pieces to the next Sunday. And one last thing, we will put this, once Zoom processes the recording, we will put this in. So the 43rd just got put up a short while back. I'll share the link, and the 44th we'll put it up in a couple of days. So with that, I wish everyone a very good rest of Sunday evening in India.